and that's the basis for what we're going to talk about today. So when you put a molten salt reactor, which is liquid fuel, together with an accelerator-driven system, which doesn't have to be critical, then you've got a new technology, and our corporation, Addy Corporation, has been pushing this since basically since I left Los Alamos in 1997, and it's been kind of quiet, but I want to show you where this is now headed. I want to make a point that if you want to introduce new technology, particularly in the nuclear area, that you can plan and think and write and spend time in front of a computer. But I found out in my career that if you actually go out and do something, build some apparatus, put some metal on the floor, that it gets people's attention, and if you can somehow find the resources to do that, then the next money will come and the next money will come. And so that's what we basically are doing in Virginia and Rocky Mount right now, which is where I want to start this talk. This is a...
please.
Pardon?
The vast majority of this Consortium Authority are not nuclear engineers, so bear that in mind, sir, as you're making this presentation, okay? Only a few of us are.
Okay.
This is really a simple diagram.
This looks like the way we fund the federal government.
A lot of work went into making this as simple as it is.
The reality is that this is the only slide I'm going to show you.
So, I feel better already. This whole presentation, I'm like, oh my God.
Okay, so let me just say that even though you may not be intimately familiar with nuclear reactor technology, that you must be. I know you're familiar with the issues of nuclear energy as we have it today. And I have to point out that my experience is not only with nuclear energy, but with nuclear weapons, because I spent time with almost 30 years there. So anyway, I want to start by just reading across the top here the things that this new technology can do that we're working with to try to get it launched, and we're trying to do this presently from Virginia. So the advantages of this fuel cycle and of this means of doing nuclear energy is that there's no weapons material that is required from it. You know, there's an intimate bond between nuclear energy and nuclear weapons, and we see all that talked about around all the time and everywhere, and it's been going on for decades. But this system requires no enriched uranium and no plutonium. So we say that here. Big reprocessing issue that's gone on for years with nuclear. Ricardo didn't like that, and so we don't require that anyway. Solid fuel is an issue. You have to have somewhere to make it. It's expensive to make. Why not make liquid fuel, which doesn't have the integrity problems and so forth? It has no volatile inventory. That's what happened in Japan. Present fuels have this enormous amount of radioactive materials that if anything breaks in the system, they get released and they spread all over the place easily. But this system has means, called this liquid fuel, to get rid of that quickly and to store it in a safe place away from the reactor. There's very little fissile material in this kind of system compared to, for example, fast reactors, which the Nuclear Energy Office of the DOE has been pushing since 1970. The ones who won the battle, who've never deployed a viable reactor in all that time. There's never a critical mass in this system because the accelerator basically is a proton accelerator. It hits a heavy target, which could be lead or it could be uranium, and it sprays out neutrons, and it makes a lot of them. It makes as many neutrons as a reactor makes. And then those neutrons spread out, and because they're there, they can interact with fuel, and they can cause fission and make nuclear energy. And so, but you don't have to have a critical mass to do it, because when the accelerator turns off, the neutrons go away, everything shuts down. So that's so if you talk about some kind of accidental problem like happened at Chernobyl, that can't happen with this kind of system. You get very high burnup of fuel, and this means when you put a fuel in, you can leave it in there for a long time because it's liquid and not solid fuel. You don't have damage happening to the fuel, so you can leave it in there as long as the system will actually produce useful power. There's a possibility that I'll talk to you a little bit about where you can reduce the storage time on land from this kind of nuclear energy system, typically from 1 million years for Yucca Mountain down to about 1,000 years. So those are a long list of things, and the reason it's long is because it does no good for people in the DOE, for example, to develop a new reactor technology that doesn't solve all the problems that nuclear faces. If you solve half the problems and you still have the other half left, you haven't advanced because the system is still vulnerable and it's problematic. So when we started this project at Los Alamos, which is where it actually began, we said, what are all the problems? If we have anything to offer, it's got to be something that's going to solve all the problems that nuclear knows about from the beginning, and so that's why that list is there, and we believe this actually does it. But you have to start somewhere, as I mentioned earlier. So in Virginia here, we are constructing a system which will allow you to use nuclear power for something besides making electricity. And what we're talking about specifically is converting biomass to diesel. There's lots of biomass in Virginia, and if you look at the total biomass that could be converted to diesel by the processes we're talking about, it's about half of the diesel and gasoline that's produced in this country. And the reason that this technology can do it is because it's liquid, it's high temperature, and you have to, if you want to convert biomass to diesel, you have to do it at high temperature. And the LWRs we have today can't do it. The fast reactors that the DOE is trying to develop can't do it. This is the only system that can do it, and was invented at Oak Ridge in 1970. And that reactor, there were a lot of really nice things about that reactor. Anyway, so these are the things that can be made into diesel: byproduct cellulosic material, wood, manure digested solids, that's from dairy cattle operations, wheat stalk, corn stalks, hay, and so those are the feeds, and we can work with any of these. But we have to show that we can do this. So that's what the VCLF Corporation is about. And so in Virginia, we now have this reciprocating retort system almost built. It'll start operations the 1st of October to convert these kinds of things to charcoal. That's the first step in getting to diesel. But it turns out that that's a business of all of its own. It's activated charcoal, and we can produce it, we believe, at half the price because of a new system we have, and this doesn't have anything to do with nuclear. Well, it does have, it's the root of what we're talking about today. But that's the first step to get from biomass to diesel, is to get activated charcoal, and these 5 arrows meant that we build the system in Rocky Mount there where we are, for Callaway, and we can spread that technology all over the state. And that's a sort of a $4 billion international industry right now. And this reciprocating retort is a part of it. The molten salt reactor at Oak Ridge, that I said was so important, has not been implemented, and so it turns out that to get to diesel we have to employ molten salt. And so what we are going to do after we get the charcoal produced is use the charcoal with the molten salt to produce actually the diesel. And when we get that done, then there can be many places in Virginia where you can start with this byproduct cellulosic material and get to diesel. And you're using molten salt, which is a key technology that was developed and demonstrated so successfully at Oak Ridge. So with this in hand and completed, which we will have in a year, we're ready to move on to build a demonstration reactor for this technology, subcritical accelerator-driven reactor. And the problem we want to go after is weapons plutonium production or destruction, which is a key issue, as you know, with the Russians. There's about half of the plutonium owned by both countries that is excess, and we want to get rid of it, and it has to be burned up. And Russia has a plan, the U.S. has a plan. Lindsey Graham, wants to do this down in South Carolina, and that isn't going to work. But that's all that the U.S. has to put on the table. The Russian plan isn't going to work either. But this technology can be made to work with to burn plutonium, weapon plutonium. That's the simplest objective for this reactor that we can start with. And so basically, we build this reactor. We have to have an accelerator to do it. One exists at Oak Ridge right now. A new accelerator sufficient to drive a reactor that will run at 250 megawatts thermal. And basically, when you feed in these materials over here and do some things down in South Carolina with the mock facility that they're working with, that you will have a feed put into this thing, and that system will generate about 75 million gallons per year of 100% renewable diesel. It's being done, if it's done at Los Alamos, it's done under the NNSA, and so it's done within the Department of Energy, that part of the Department of Energy. And if that fuel, liquid fuel, is used within the Department of Defense, then there's no regulatory activity from the NRC on what happens with this, because it's all within the Department of Defense. So we can generate this technology, deploy it, and generate fuel, show that the system works, it's economic, without having to get involved with the NRC. And there's facilities in this state to actually build this reactor, and facilities in the Navy to actually consume this fuel, which presently has about a $2 a gallon subsidy from the EPA on each gallon. So the idea is to build a system, and you have to have a place to build it. It probably won't get built in the state. It get built either in Oak Ridge or in Los Alamos using existing accelerators or deployed there, but it actually could get built in the state by new shipbuilding, for example. So that, with the success of that, then you open the door to a number of other problems. The problem with nuclear chiefly now is waste and what to do with it, and it goes on, and there's never seems to be any satisfactory resolution of that. But this is just a demo system. We continue as the next deployment to destroy this 50 tons of excess weapons plutonium in both Russia and the United States, that you could build a system that's 4 times as large as this one, and you have to have 4 of those. And then they might be located in Amarillo, Texas, Carlsbad, New Mexico, so down in South Carolina or in Oak Ridge. But anyway, you build that to burn that excess weapons plutonium. And many people think that's a very important thing to do. Then there's LWR spent fuel, which people want to directly burn and so forth. And I want to mention that the molten salt system can not only make diesel, but it can make electricity. It's just that the economics of making diesel are much better than the economics of making electricity. Everybody knows what the economics of electricity is from reactors. Nobody knows what it is if you're making diesel with reactors, and we've gone through this analysis, putting a lot of our own cash in here because it looks like a great business with that worked very successly and competitive with other sources of diesel, and it's 100% renewable. So we got a little bit off the subject there, saying that there's LWR spent fuel, and there are problems with this matter of directly burning spent fuel. It's not generally known that spent fuel, plutonium and spent